What's going on YouTube? Alright, so you clicked on this video, it was because you are interested in the Canon RF 35mm f1.8. So let's go ahead and dive into this right now. Starting off with price, you are looking at $499.99 on B&H, Best Buy. Amazon had it for $499 flat, and Canon also had it for $499. They did have refurbished versions, which were $399. So if you're interested in saving $100, I would say probably buy refurbished. Canon does offer a warranty with that. Now, as far as the lens construction goes, the lens is fully made of hard plastic with a metal mounting ring. It has 11 elements and 9 aperture blades. There is no weather sealing gasket. It is a full-time manual with the autofocus switch, which is actually nice because the 16mm and the 50mm lack an autofocus switch. There are 5 stops of image stabilization correction, which means you can shoot at a slower shutter speed and still have a solidly sharp image. Also includes a customizable ring, which is a staple for Canon lenses now, which basically allows you to customize that ring at the front of the lens to whatever setting you choose. I personally have mine set to ISO because it makes it faster when you have to switch from a light to a dark scene or vice versa. You can also have the ring declicked, so if you don't like the clicking noises, you can send that off to Canon and they will disengage that for you for a fee. The weight of the lens is 305 grams or 0.68 pounds, or if you want to be technical, it's pretty much almost 11 ounces. The thread size for that is 52 millimeters. The aperture range is from f1.8 to an f22. The close focusing distance is 0.56 feet or 0.17 meters from the sensor plane. So pretty much from the sensor plane to the end of the lens, and then from the tip of the lens to your subject is basically a half foot. So if you do enjoy macro photography, that is a nice feature. The autofocus is good in photos and locks onto your subject with ease. As far as videos, that also depends on how you have your autofocus set up in the menu. You can choose it to go slower or quicker if you want. The autofocus is a little bit noisy, so shooting and recording in-camera audio might suffer some, so just keep that into consideration when you are purchasing this lens. If you're doing some run and gun and you have the autofocus on, if your subject is moving, you might notice the noise from the autofocus, so just bear that in mind. Like I mentioned, the image stabilization is great for run and gun style handheld work or shooting in lower light situations with higher shutter speeds, but is no replacement for a tripod, so just keep that in mind. But that being said, 90% of the work that you need to do handheld with image stabilization with this lens is good enough. I think if you were doing run and gun, maybe like interviews or a documentary or something, if you were using like a Canon R series body, I think even with this you should be okay. Most of the image stabilization was shot on the Canon EOS RP, so I didn't use the R5 because I didn't want the in-body image stabilization of the R5 to kind of like counteract that test. So I use the RP because it has no in-body image stabilization. Anyways, so moving on, you will definitely need a lens hood for this. This lens is going to have some lens flares, so just keep that in mind. They're not overly aggressive. Some people might like them, some people not. But if you're pointing it towards any light, you may get them in your video or images. Like I said, just keep that in mind. It does keep good contrast against harsh lighting though, so that is also a plus. While it's not the best, I think that you should still get some pretty solid results. All right, now moving on to image quality. So looking at these image samples, we're going to go ahead and start off at f1.8 and move all the way up. The in-body camera corrections are turned off. So at f1.8, you are going to have a lot of barrel distortion and vignetting. They are very noticeable at wide open. Some people might like that, especially if they're shooting portraits. So just keep that in mind. There is some softness in the corners, but the center of the image is sharp. Stopping down to an f3.2, you notice that the vignette disappears from the corners, as well as the softness. the overall sharpness of the image does improve. Now, I skipped over from f1.8 to f3.2. Basically, you don't really see any real improvement up until about f3.2. So even if you're shooting at f1.8 to f2.8, honestly, I mean, besides the vignette a little bit disappearing, I mean, the sharpness and the corners are pretty much almost the same. At f5 in my testing, there is a great sharpness edge to edge, and that stays that sharp up until f14. Then by f16, you do notice some softness in the corners due to diffraction. It's not super soft, so just take that into consideration, but I think even at f16, you should still get a pretty good image. For longitudinal chromatic aberration, at f1.8, you will notice green and magenta color fringing on contrasting edges, as seen in the photos that I am showing you right now. So you will notice that a little bit more. But if you stop down to around an f2.8, you'll see that issue pretty much vanish at that point. Close-up macro image quality is sharp, but shooting at f1.8 will give you some color fringing on contrasting edges and a very narrow window for getting the center of the image sharp. Unless it's stationary, stopping down will ultimately help with that issue, but the macro images are definitely sharp. So if you're shooting macro or really close up at an f1.8, unless your subject is stationary, you're going to be fighting trying to get that center sharp. I tried hand holding at f1.8 to shoot some macro, and honestly, I got more bad out of focus shots than I did with good in focus shots, and that was mostly just due to the wind that was outside, and I was trying to take a picture of a flower. It kept flapping back and forth in the wind, so kind of sucks if you're going to shoot something outside, like if you want to do macro with this lens. It's possible, but sometimes might not be the best. The only thing I didn't get to test with this lens in the time that I rented it was for sun stars and bokeh balls, but I did look online at some examples of bokeh, and the bokeh balls look like ovals or cat eyes, so hopefully that helps someone looking for this information. Other than that, I think for $499, this is a decent lens if you are switching over to the RF mount from an EF camera, or if you're looking to pick up your first R system. I think that this is a good lens if you're going to start shooting portraits, but in all honesty, for $500, I feel that you could probably get a better EF mounted lens that's 35mm from Tamron or Sigma for a quarter of the price, maybe even. So I don't know, I'd have to look online, but for $500 for this lens, you might be able to buy some secondhand 35mm Sigma for $300 or $400. So just take that into consideration. But if you want to stick with Canon, there you go. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like this video, also give it a thumbs up. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit all the buttons. I'm Jordan, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.